popping on here, so just want to give them time. Let's see. So, Killian, what's new with you, kid? Hopefully, the music is kind of soothing and calming, and I think it goes great with our guest tonight. Okay. Who else do we have out there? We've got Jason, Killian. Well, so far we're at 2. Woohoo! We'll get there. We'll get there. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Yeah, Killian, another trip, another weekend. That's right. Trip back to Virginia. Well, you be safe when going. So let's go ahead and start. I want to begin by welcoming my guest this evening, a wonderful guy. I'll let him tell you, what branch of the military he was in, what he's done and seen, and all that good stuff. But let me go ahead and start by welcoming Lee Deckelman. Hi, Ron. I see you there. Welcome. So here we go. Here is Lee Deckelman. Hi, Lee. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Awesome. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. How about you?
Doing really good. I can't thank you enough for doing this for me today, and hopefully your evening or the rest of your day went well.
Yeah, it's been a great weekend. Good weather,
Nice.
good weather here in Coffee County, Tennessee.
There you go. I've um, I've been to coffee just a couple times, just kind of more through it than I have actually
On
physically been
I-24.
there. So
Yeah, a lot of people come through here on I-24.
yeah. So Jim, I see you there. Thank you for joining. Jim says, thank you for your service. And
Yeah,
also,
thanks for anybody that shows up, live to listen to us talk. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Jason, that's my husband. Jason says, welcome and thank you for your service and your time tonight as well. Really, really appreciate it. As I know, we talked before, I'm going to go wherever you take us. So, just kind of a conversation about your life and what you've done and where you're at today and how you got here. Um, so we're happy to have you. Killian says, welcome in, Brother Lee. Stay hard.
Thanks.
So,
Getting
yeah.
old. Yeah, getting old's not for sissies. I'm trying.
That's right. That's our oldest, is Killian.
Yeah,
So we're happy to have him here.
thanks.
Ron, again, nice to meet you. Thank you for your service, brother. That is from Ron Wayne. Um, so I guess we'll start the conversation off by, asking you to talk a little bit about your life before the military, family life, education, things like that.
Okay, so just on the front end, so anybody viewing this doesn't get confused at kind of how I go about this. So, you know, my life story, is already in a book on Amazon. And so there's a lot of layers to that. So I just want to say that on the front end so that, if we have time to get to different things, but, the little bit about me, in general is, I grew up, you know, all the men and a lot of the women on both sides of my family are all military, but I grew up not really necessarily wanting to be in the military. And, I had a lot of kids, grow up and have traumatic childhoods, and I was no exception to that. So, giving up for adoption, soon after birth until about 6, my dad died when I was 9, and that brought us back home, which is, the Coffee County, Tullahoma area. So all my mother's family on both sides all grew up, and went to school out Raleigh Creek, and so this is home. And so when my father passed away, you know, from Baltimore, we had come from Baltimore, so yeah, and then around age 14, living here in Tullahoma, at the end of a summer, my mother tried to kill me with a butcher's knife because there was no food in the house, and my grandma
Oh, wow.
intervened in that scenario, and that really insulted my mother to her core. And so I was 14 at the time, and physically, my mother didn't, try to intimidate me or hurt me physically anymore. So I really wasn't worried in that scenario. And then just out of nowhere, as soon as my grandmother left, my mother. So, anyways, I went to go. I talk about a lot of that in my book, and I go live in McMinnville in Warren County, and it was a great experience. Loved those folks. Loved playing football there. Had a lot of still have a lot of great friends there. But living with my aunt and uncle was a little, it was just void of love. And I think that was a time in my life where, I just needed a little different scenario. And
Right.
instead of things being harder and stricter, I probably needed things to soften up and just be better. But either way, looking back on that, a lot of great things came from that, even though it was a real hard part of my life. And then I come back to Tullahoma my junior year, graduate from Tullahoma my senior year. And so I don't have any other options but really to join the Army because there was no work. And so that's kind of, in a nutshell, my childhood and how a lot of people with a childhood like that wind up going in the military to get sorted out.
Right. Because they're looking for direction. They're looking for, some guidance, wanting to be part of something, feeling that, regardless of what it is, I'm assuming that's kind of, you kind of look for other people like-minded and
Sure, sure. I think that's the mature or the educated view. But I think when you're 18 or 19 years old, you gravitate because you're that type of person they're looking for. That you do need a family environment. You do need some
Mhm.
boundaries and some standards, and you do need to start living by a code and not just. So yeah, I think that type of person. And then the ones that wind up doing well, um, you know, are typically, truly just a warrior class of people, which I think is just another type of person that, we all mix together and we wonder why everybody doesn't get along. It's because we're not all from the same tribe
Yeah,
genetically, like at a deeper level than just, go to school for a couple of years and learn to think different. It's deeper than that. I think we're
uh,
just different people, and I think it takes different types of people to keep the thing going.
absolutely.
Yeah,
So Jim was asking the name of your book. So it's Internal
yeah,
Volume
sure, yeah, appreciate that.
and Where a Monster and Mindfulness Become One. And that's Lee Allen Deckelman.
Yeah, and it's on Amazon. You can get it on Amazon, and you know, if anybody ever likes it enough and wants me to sign it, they mail it to me, or if live nearby, it's an honor to got to fly. You know, I wrote that book. You'll read the book and you'll know why I wrote the book because I talk about that. But the real um, bonus after you sell one copy and it's like at least somebody bought it, right? Um,
I know.
yeah, it's like you write a book, nobody buys it except you. But uh, I it really therapeutic. Like
Yeah.
what we're doing right now, there's probably a lot of pretentious or a lot of egotistical people that are on a podcast and they think one thing or whatever. But for me, every time I'm on a podcast like this or have an opportunity, this is just therapy. This is talking about my story, being honest, putting that positive, loving, forgiving energy out into the universe and hoping that that comes back to me, you know. So, and that book um, is really what allowed all that to happen, you know, at a therapeutic level, you know, working through some childhood trauma that you just compartmentalize, you know, that's for sissies, you know, worrying about, you know, who that's silly, you know,
Mm.
right? Like an episode of Seinfeld or something. But then you get old enough and wise enough and you've seen enough and you go, oh no, I've had it wrong. Had it wrong this whole time.
I know you and I talked earlier today. My thoughts is that people assume because you're military, you're hardened, you don't have feelings, things of that nature. But really, in my view, you guys have, you know, not just feelings, but an abundance because you've been through so much, you've seen so much, and it's you're taught to try and hold it in, but really you guys need to let it out.
Sure,
and
sure.
and
That's a super great question. Um, you know, that persona of a warrior, of uh, you know, a tough guy, a tough girl, whatever it is, that carries a lot of weight. Because I think a lot of people that gravitate to serve for the right reasons, um, you know, um, where was I going with that? Dad gum. What had you said? Sometimes I do. I go down too many. Um,
that's okay.
what
So
was
just about the feelings and the fact that a lot of
right?
people,
So
I think.
that's where yes, yeah, so,
Mhm.
and I love getting on these deep kind of topics like that. But I'm a very emotional person. My children are very emotional. My mother was very emotional. Um, you know, passion. So if you're joining the military for the right reasons, you've got all that passion. Um, then yeah, you know, that's why you have a lot of people in the military that feel like they come home and they're a failure and they take their own lives and things like that because it's, you know, it really matters. I think a lot of veterans, not all, there's exceptions to every group, but you know, the majority of veterans really do care a little bit more than the average person because or the average, or you know, like first responders as well, is who's going to put themselves in really truly harm's way, like scary movie kind of harm's way,
Right.
for $30,000 a year. I mean, who's going to do so? So it's got to be people, like I said, the ones doing it for the right reason. Do you have a small group of, you know, psychopaths that, you know, want to carry a gun for a living just so they can smoke somebody, you know, and get paid for it and get free beer the rest of their life? But, you know, if you're doing it for the right reason, yeah, yeah, I think, not to relate, you know, not to go on, but I think a lot of, passionate people, um, and and when you talk about, you know, whether people are narcissistic or empathic, I think people that have been through a lot, if you can get through to them, they're very empathic. They care a lot or whatever. They've just been crushed and hurt too much. You know, kind of like my mother, for example, and they just become a monster. You know, but I don't think they wanted to be or started out that way. I think people get hurt enough and traumatized enough, and um, so I hope we get into it, but I think there's lots of different types of monsters when we refer to people as monsters and killers. You know, there's a lot of variations to that. And I think the general public, when they see news and mass shootings or whatever, they just lump all those type of people into one group. And that's furthest from the truth.
Exactly, exactly. Laura Moore, she says writing a book's hard, and congratulations. She says she started a dozen and finished zero. Not gonna lie, I started a couple myself. They've been hanging out there for several years. So yeah, so the fact that you were able to get it completed was a huge accomplishment, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know about that. what I did, my advice to anyone, because I'm not a writer, very average student in English, don't even enjoy writing. Uh, but, but, you know, I have a free yoga foundation, and Derek Crownover, a big time attorney up in Nashville, is a friend of mine, it advised me to get some notoriety, possibly through a book. And so that went on for years. And then COVID hit. Well, that was a great example to do something different. You know, walk the Appalachian Trail, write a book or whatever, right? Take what appears to be a horrible scenario and show how strong we are as a race, you know, as a people, that in this, you know, because a lot of great things have happened during a lot of bad times. And I wanted in that spirit to manage myself, not from a position of fear, but productivity, and, you know, whatever's coming's coming. And I'm going to put out this to the universe. So I wanted to put my life story out to the universe to get rid of it. You know, as
To expel it, get it out.
whether you look at it as, you know, an act of trying to manipulate karma or whatever, but I wanted to put my truth, good and bad, just out into the universe so that I could really start practicing mindfulness, which is the past is gone. There, you don't need to go back and visit it. Well, you're going to go back and visit your past because of how horrible it was or how great it was. Those two extremes is going to take somebody back, nostalgia or just trauma. And both of those places, when you study the brain, when somebody's in that mindset, those are part of your brains associated with suffering. So as soon as that was known to me, oh, that's how it works. You know, the body keeps
Right.
score. Bessel van der Kolk, you know, working with the military, with trauma, with PTSD, after reading that book and starting to understand. So, yeah.
And that's really very true. You know, you tend to go back to hurtful times, you know, times where you suffered or had trauma, and sometimes you tend to get yourself into it more and more. It seems like it's easier to be in a bad way in your head than it is to be happy for a lot of people. And of course, the longer you are in that bad mindset, it is even harder to get out. It becomes a bad habit, like smoking, like drugs, like any of that.
Absolutely. So the neurology behind what you just said is as simple as looking at a roadmap. Like, you know, the neural pathways, what you do all the time, if that's getting pissed off all the time, so the neural pathway to getting pissed off in your brain, from being human to being pissed off, looks like a 6-lane interstate. That's how
Oh, wow.
strong that neural pathway is. You know, whereas a person like that, the neural pathway to that beautiful place, that kind place, that forgiving place, probably looks like a trail that's grown over with weeds that nobody's been walking on for a while. So you compare that, and then, you know, my generation was told that you only have so many brain cells, and when you lose them, they're gone. So you better not do drugs, you better not do stupid,
Right.
whatever.
Right.
That's not true at all. That it's the opposite of true. So through mindfulness, through loving kindness type training, through all these things, no matter how people may judge that, it's proven, just after hours, you know, not weeks or months, just after hours, or some of these positive reinforcement treatments, that the part of the brain that's associated with joy grows. And so
It,
if you start thinking about the brain like a muscle,
well,
that's
it is.
what we're finding out. It acts in that similar way.
Yeah. Hey, so Tennessee Goddess, you know her as Tiffany. So she said
Yeah.
to
We got,
say
hey,
hello.
yeah.
Yeah. She said you grew up with her.
Yeah. So so it's not confusing to people. I didn't say in my intro. So I joined the Army. I spent some time as a regular infantryman. I spent some time in 1st of the 75th Ranger Battalion. I was in Desert Storm, Desert Shield. I was in 3rd Special Forces Group as a Green Beret. And
Oh,
then
wow.
9/11, being a 911 paramedic, and then after 9/11, being a federal air marshal, I worked for 10 or 12 or 15 years. I think it was 15 years, doing security contracting overseas with companies like Triple Canopy, Blackwater, and whatnot. And so, just for those out there, I want to throw that out there. But Tiffany, so in chapter 2 of my book, I talk about the Battles family. So I'm this, I'm this little Jewish boy.
Oh, welcome to the club.
Yeah, so welcome to the tribe, right? So I'm this little Jewish boy that moves down from Baltimore, Maryland, to Tennessee, where all my real family is. My mom had just gone up there and met my dad, and that's how we wound it up there for a little while. But um, so um, so we find my dad dies, and we finally get his insurance money and build a house. So we've been bouncing around for a year, just living with different people, with my widowed mother and my 2 older sisters. And so we move into this neighborhood in Tullahoma, and not, I don't know, I don't weeks, months. Tiffany can probably tell you, but her family moves into the neighborhood, and that was the first Black family that had like moved in like anywhere on that side of town. And so it was a really big deal. And I didn't understand why, because it was like, I didn't know that people, some people didn't like Jewish people, or some people didn't like Black people, or whatever. Like I didn't know that yet. I was 10 years old, and I had not uh, been educated on any of that yet. But so I had already had friends in Maryland of, Asian friends, Black friends, whatever. So her older brother, Brian, and me were just best buddies. We would play in the backyard and everything. And she was a little bit younger and running around. And, I think she wanted to play with us. She'll probably say she wanted to come play football and stuff with us, but I don't know that her dad, Fred, would let her do that. He ran a pretty tight ship. And but I think the world of her and her brother, and her mom's still alive, and they're just really good, really, really good people. And so I'm glad that she put us in touch.
I am too. We actually, my husband and I, got to meet her face to face for the first time yesterday. As a matter of fact,
Oh, wow.
um, we've been, well, I mean, like in person, face to face, because we've been on a friend of ours show. I'm Not From This Planet, on his YouTube channel, and um, so, but physically got to meet her yesterday, and just is great in person, as if on video. So, but yeah,
She,
she thinks the world of you for sure.
yeah,
So
her and her brother as good as they come. They're just,
yeah,
yeah. And
yeah.
I'm fortunate. I'm blessed. You'll read that in my family story ain't too nice, but I've been blessed with tons of amazing friends. And it does make a difference. It does make
It it really did. Really,
yeah,
really does.
yeah.
So, um, what what kind of stories can you tell? Any kind of humorous stories, things like that, about, say, your boot camp or basic training? What was it for you? Boot camp, basic training?
I think they called it both. I mean, I think basic training was probably the more official. But yeah. Uh, no, I mean, I think everybody goes to basic training. Like if you're an infantryman and you're in the Army and you go to Fort Benning, you're going to have about the same type of story as anybody that's went down there. It's kind of,
Right,
it's a controlled environment that's scheduled out, to the second, to the, and so it creates a very predictable environment for a bunch of silly boys and girls, given each day we're going to have them do these sets of things. And after a while, you can watch mice or you can watch people, and there's going to be behavioral patterns. And
Right.
so just about everybody's got a story of basic training where somebody tried to kill themselves to go home, where we had to bring all of our wall lockers and beds outside and set it up because we didn't keep everything clean. And, but I got a few really good stories in the book that I don't want to steal from the reader, but I've got a good Ranger school. I've got a good Ranger school story that was pretty funny that probably any kind of infantryman or anybody that's been out in the field like that can appreciate if you want. I've got a rated PG. I mean, this is
Well,
rated PG, right? Right?
this is actually, so it is not, it's posted out there. This is not for children. So we're all adults, and
Oh,
so feel free.
I've got some hilarious stories. I don't know if I want to tell them. I don't know if there'll be a
And
record.
that's okay. It's totally up to you what you'd like
Yeah.
to share.
I'll stick to the safe ones. But like when I went to Ranger School in 1987, we were doing patrolling. So if you think about a Vietnam era type patrolling, when you see Vietnam movies and how they're in a V formation walking through the woods, and every
Mhm.
now and then everybody can see each other and that type of thing. And so it's nighttime, and it's sometimes at night there's a lot of light, and sometimes at night you can't see your hand in front of your face. So it's one of those nights where it was really dark. So we were really moving really slow, and we were probably like in our second week of Ranger School. So we had just started the field phase of Derby phase. And the Ranger instructor, or the RI, like the drill sergeant for basic training in Ranger School, you have an RI instead of a DI. That's your Ranger instructor. At that phase of Ranger School, you only had one instructor walking with the group. So it was like a squad size with one instructor. Then Mountain Phase, they put two squads together and you have two instructors. It's
Okay.
kind
Yeah.
of to a platoon. And so we start walking. Well, in Fort Benning, Georgia, anybody that's been out in the woods in Fort Benning, Georgia knows that they have these huge erosion ditches. And I'm talking like cliffs down to the ground. We're talking, 30, 40, 50, 60-foot drops, where the ground is just sunk out there at Fort Benning for different reasons. And so we're walking at night. And a lot of times in Ranger School, when you're walking at night, the RI or the Ranger instructor will kind of be doing his own thing, keeping an eye on you, but he doesn't just walk in line with you like another member of the team. And so we're walking, all of a sudden we hear this guy scream out. And, that's the last thing any of us would have done, if something would have happened, because, you'll get in trouble for breaking noise and light discipline. That's a serious thing, out on patrol. And so he screams out. So we find our way over to the edge of this ditch. And I can remember looking down in there. And this was winter phase of Ranger School. So we got like 90-pound rucksacks. It's been on our back for hours. And now we're standing looking over this cliff and we can't even see him. And so, we're asking him if he's okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm okay. He said, I got to find my rucksack. So I guess as he fell and tumbled, he lost his rucksack or his backpack. And he says, y'all just stay right there and I'll find a way out and come back up. And so I just dumped back on my rucksack, rucksack flop. And I had an MRE taken apart and stored, because in Ranger School, you can't eat unless you're authorized. Well, you're almost never authorized to eat. So everybody learns to eat whenever you can. So I drop down and start eating a packet out of my MRE. And one of the guys in my squad leans down to me and he goes, "Hey, man, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm eating." The next thing I know, it was like dominoes. Bam, 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 bam. Everybody in the squad. That message went down our squad like in 10 seconds, everybody was sitting on their butt, eating something real quick. And I guess about 10 minutes went by. Everybody ate something, got cleaned back up. We could hear him coming. We couldn't see him, but we could hear him coming. And we never said a word about the ranger instructor falling off the cliff. And nobody ever said a word about us stopping and eating. But I always thought that was kind of a funny story. You know, people were waiting for permission to eat. It's like, no, this is one of those scenarios where you
This is
go,
your permission. He's not there.
yeah. If I was in war, which I spent 9 years between Iraq and Afghanistan, you know, once you get out of training phase and you've spent some real time in war, you realize the parts of training that matter and the parts that don't. And sometimes there's some parts of training that are really focused on
Mhm.
that really don't matter when it's for real. So it's nice to kind of see both sides of that.
Right. So, what kept you motivated while you were in the service? And was it different for each thing that you were doing?
Wow, that's a great question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that. So when I first went in, I wanted to be an airborne ranger. Because now I was 19 years old and as stupid as you could be at 19. So, you know, keep that in mind. So I was going to be an airborne ranger, and my high school sweetheart, who, you know, I didn't really have her attention anymore. I was going to win back her attention by becoming, you know, this great warrior, you know, this great war hero or something. And so that's what I set out to do. And then she sent me a Dear John letter,
Mhm.
um, like 4 or 5 weeks into basic training. And so then I was just a traumatized, I was just a traumatized dude. Um, you know, I just survived it. So when I went back in, the second time, my motivation was family. I had a wife and 2 kids, or I had a wife and a kid, and I would have a second kid that next year
Congrats.
in the Army. So the first was all, you know, that Romeo and Juliet type stuff, and the second time was like real life. I need a job with benefits and so
Right.
yeah.
Good pay.
But I ultimately got medically retired, so that was another really traumatic event that shifted my life, probably more so than anything. So,
So,
and if
is
we
that
don't,
anything you can talk about?
oh yeah, I'll talk about anything. But if we don't get to any of it, everything we're touching on is if anybody's interested in the book. Uh, so when I went back in, I went back in and went to First Ranger Battalion. I left there and went to Third Special Forces Group as a Green Beret. I became a medic, so I was a Special Forces medic, and
Wow.
you know, about 3 or 4 years into that, um, they thought I had prostate cancer,
Oh,
and
geez.
and so they ran some kind of initial test, and they thought pretty sure that's what it was, and so me and my wife were struggling a little bit at the time, and I had 2 years left in the Army, and so you know we were planning for the worst, and it was like, well, you know, I'll be getting out soon, you know, assuming that, you know, this cancer is managed and all that. And so we made up a quick plan for her to come home with the kids, set up shop. They were of school age now. So it was really important to wherever they start school, let's plan on being there for a little while. And I knew that wasn't going to be Fort Bragg, North Carolina anymore because of my situation. And
Right.
she transitions back, gets a job at home. The kids are at homeschool. Everything's good. But now I'm going through this process, and they discover it's not my prostate. They think it's my bladder. And so they do some surgeries on my bladder, and then those surgeries go bad. And so they kind of wrecked me.
That's
And
not good.
anybody knows that if you have surgery in the military and they hurt you, there's no recourse. They just put you out. And so when they put me out with incontinence. So imagine being, 30 something years old, you're a Green Beret, and you're walking around base pissing yourself, because of this surgery. And so I just wasn't going to wear a diaper.
Right.
So anyway, so I got put out. And when I got put out, that, I didn't want to have sex anymore. I didn't, I had some problems down there. And so when I got put out, things were, I guess, worse probably with my wife. And she wound up having a relationship with my best friend. And so with the surgeries, the failed surgeries, again, I don't want to steal that away from the book. Any guy that reads this book that still has his testicles is not going to like that chapter. It was a very, very traumatic experience. And I can kind of, laugh about a little bit or whatever, but I still have recurring. I spent 9 years in combat. I've had 2 nightmares in my life. One was of Ranger School and one was of something in Desert Storm. I don't remember any other nightmares. I still have nightmares of these surgeries and being in hospitals and people trying to cut my penis off.
I can't now. Granted, I don't have a penis. Don't want a penis, but I
you
can
imagine.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just the thought of that. I'm sure all the guys that are watching this are like,
oh, yeah. So I had to kind of take it easy in the book. Some of the stuff I had to take easy in the book because like people aren't going to believe this. But I didn't write anything in the book. I knew, I've worked for 5 different billionaires doing security protection. If I knew anything, it's like, I better make sure anything I put in this book is true.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't want to call you. You don't want people calling you out as a fraud.
No.
I have a question. Jim said, because you do yoga, which is very calming and soothing, have you ever thought of figuring something out for the military where they don't have medical issues just from PT, or where they have medical issues just from PT, like the knees, the back, the neck?
Yeah. So let me make sure I understood that question right. Is he asking me, would I be interested, or do I think we should have yoga in the military? I'm not sure I understand that question.
Probably. Do you think that they should have maybe something along the lines of yoga in the military? Something?
Listen, 100%. So not only do I think the military should have yoga, I think that we should be taught mindfulness and critical thinking throughout our life, just like English and math and whatnot. But more specific, what did you say his name was? Jim?
Jim. Mm-hmm.
Jim, can he hear me?
He can hear you. Yep. Okay. Everybody out there. So we've got 14 people watching right now.
Wow. All right.
I'm moving on up.
Hey, so I started a foundation, Be Yoga Strong Foundation. It's beyogastrong.net. And, the whole goal of that foundation is to say, I'm this warrior that's broken, and I found something that's where I can fix myself instead of waiting for somebody else to fix me or waiting on the government to fix me, which you don't want to do that. So, I'm going to do everything I can to fix myself. And so I started that foundation to give free yoga to the community and especially veterans. You'd be surprised at how little traction that gets. You got a lot of people that say they support veterans. The government says they support veterans, but when something really does seem to work and people are willing to offer it for free, nobody makes any money. And so it doesn't seem to be an interest, but it works. And I've got, 20, 30 regulars that rotate through my class that have been with me a few years now. And, this mindfulness yoga does work. And I think the military should do that. What the military is doing right now, I don't know. I know they're doing it in the special ops community, but they're putting sensors on people and they're reading your cardiac variability. And
Hmm.
so, and what that is, if my yoga pose is perfect, then you think I'm perfect at yoga. But on the inside, I could be a serial killer. I could be going crazy, thinking about 80 different things at one time. I could be miserable. I could go to bed sucking my thumb every night. But you see my pose and you think I'm perfect. So having low cardiac variability, for example, is somebody that goes around and acts like, yeah, everything's good in my life, blah, 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 blah. They dress good, they work out, whatever, but they're miserable on the inside. So they can actually measure that now. That's what's
That's
so exciting is they can actually measure that you're faking it, that what's really going on, your cardiac variability, if it's low, you're miserable on the inside, and anywhere from 5 to 15 years it'll shorten your lifespan. So that stress that kills, that being unhappy that kills, it's real. They got the science that can prove what yoga has been saying for thousands of years. And not just yoga, the Jewish faith has Musar, which is what I practice. It's a virtuous yoga practice. So from just being a verse, so yes, yes, I think, and I offer it for free. I'm just waiting for all those rich people that say they care about veterans and care about people and care about humanity. I'm just waiting for somebody to say, "Hey, what do you need annually to make this work?" And if it really works, we'll grow it.
so.
That's all I'm waiting on. But yes, to
Do
answer the
you?
question,
Yeah. Do
there's no.
you do this like live? Like, do you do it via Skype or something like
I
for
did
outside
do
of Middle
live.
Tennessee?
I did do live during COVID. Um, uh, I ran into some issues with that. Um, I I do have at byogastrong.coffee county on YouTube. I have some free classes. There's some gentle flows. They're very therapeutic. I lead the class. I verbalize the mindfulness aspect of what people should be thinking about and what they shouldn't be thinking about, during your yoga practice, and so that those neuro pathways, if we just spend 1 hour a day retraining our mind to be present instead of the future of the past where we're suffering. If we can spend an hour a day, over time, you'll start being more mindful. And if you can immerse yourself in something like I did 4 months on the Appalachian Trail, it's nirvana. Like
Wow, 4 months, huh?
I'm telling you right now, you want to find nirvana, lose everything. You want to find nirvana, lose the phone, lose the busy, lose the world can't live without me. Go on a
Mhm.
journey that you ain't sure exactly what you're doing or how it's going to turn out. Go live. Go be in nature. Go do something real, and you'll discover your own nirvana.
Wow. Yeah. I remember, of course, prior, because I'm that old, I remember prior to, the internet and cell phones. And I mean, you couldn't walk. I mean, if you were really lucky, like we had the cord that actually had to have been, I swear, it felt like it was 50 feet and it
You
would
go
like
all the way.
coil up at the bottom on the floor. But, right?
Hey, that brings back so many memories. You were cool if you had a cord that went all the way through your house.
That's
Yeah,
right.
I got to get one of those. That was a big
Yes.
deal to have a
You
long
paid
cord.
through the nose for it, but boy, I mean, you could go anywhere and at least close the door in the
It's
bathroom
the
while you.
only way to get privacy. Otherwise, you had to stand in the kitchen where everybody could hear you talking.
Right, and that's where they kept it, was in the kitchen, which is kind of,
That's
when you
right.
stop and think about that, it's kind of weird. But it was always there, hanging up on the wall in the kitchen. And then, we got big time, went big time, and we got an extra one that was we put in the living room.
They call waiting,
Yes.
and
But I
now
mean,
you can talk to people on Mars.
I said, yeah. It's interesting though to think and to be able to go back to that time, when you think about it, would be so nice. Just the technology, of course, it has its moments, and not putting that down, but everybody is so used to instant. everything, instant gratification, instant information. And the generation today has no idea what it's like going through encyclopedias researching stuff.
Yeah. Well, we're changing as a species
Hmm.
because of technology, and I think the debate is whether that's going to end up being good or not, and that may be measured 10,000 years from now. That measurement of what kind of impact, good or bad, ultimately, I think that could take a long, long time to really understand. But my gut instinct from my own personal experiences is when I got rid of my phone for a couple years during COVID, and when my phone didn't work those 4 months on the Appalachian Trail, um, it it was. I mean, those were some of the best times of my life. And so, and this will get into more the the veteran aspect of this. So, 2004 Iraq, I'm in Ramadi. We are killing people like that's our job. Like it was no joke. And anybody that was in Ramadi in 2004, 2 4 Marines, 2 5 Marines, the Army was there. Some we had special operations. The SEALs were there. I think the next year. Anybody that was there, that place was as bad or as dangerous as anything. And the coolest part is that was the first time in my life I felt normal. It was like everything made sense. There was like nobody was lying to anybody.
Right.
Like nothing was. We're not going to do something just to be doing it because you're in charge and you got some ego problem or you don't know how to lead. Whatever. It was like everything was real. It made sense. It was like if we didn't have anything to do, we didn't have anything to do. If we had something to do, it was. So things were really, really important, and you had to know what your job was. You had to take it serious. It was accountability. So I was thrown with a warrior class of people into an actual active war. And that was the first time I didn't focus on the future or the past in my life. I was just grounded in the present. I had accepted the fact that this was my fate. I had joined the military and trained my whole life. Now I'm out of the military and I'm back over here. I'm an original member of Triple Canopy in 2004. And we're protecting Ambassador Stu Jones, who is setting up the election, the first democratic election in Iraq. We're protecting the guy that's setting that up, making that
Oh,
happen.
wow.
And so people are wanting to kill him. And so it was a real good opportunity to find out if you're really good at your job. Everybody can dress up and lift weights and get a fancy gun and look like they know what they're doing, but it's different when you get tested on a regular basis to whether you know what you're doing or not. And I didn't want to be anyplace else. And so I didn't feel that again until I was on the Appalachian Trail. And so
Wow.
that nirvana, that natural, where life naturally just seems real. It's like when your life's on the line in combat, you can't be thinking about home. You can't be thinking, I know people do, but that's not the place to live. And so I didn't live there. I accept, to me, it was like I wasn't going back home. I flew over here and I wasn't going back. That's how it was going to go. And it made things a lot simpler for me. And the problem is, I think a lot of people do that. And then once you live through it and get back home and some of your friends didn't, you're like,
Right.
well, what do I do now? What's the point?
Right.
And if you look back on Iraq and Afghanistan, which I spent 4 years in one place and 5 years in the other, what was that about now that we're looking back on it? So I hate it. I'm just glad I came back with all my toes and all my fingers. I know a lot of people didn't. But
So, as far as that goes, specific challenges then, like, for like the emotional or the mental challenges for you during that time, was it just strictly you just kind of blocked everything out and said, this is where I'm at, this is what I'm dealing with? And
well, I was fortunate, being an ex-Ranger and an ex-Green Beret and then being an original member of Triple Canopy. my team was full of some of the best guys in the business. And so all I wanted to do was show up and be a part of that, So my focus every day was being a good teammate. Was if my job was to make sure the vehicle's fueled up, double, triple check it, you know, make sure the tires are, not just, oh, they look good, like really taking pride
Right.
in your job. And people want to know what separates people in Delta Force and, these high elite from like regular whatever. And I'll tell you what, it's they don't take the basics for granted. They're meticulous. And when it comes to the basics, drop dead cold, and that's what it comes down to, because in combat, it's not a football play. It's not a rifle range where you're training for combat or whatever. It's 360 degrees. It's up. It's below you. It's all over the place. Anything can happen. The weirdest stuff can happen. You can do something stupid and lose or die or live, and somebody that didn't do something stupid is the one that died. It makes no sense.
Yeah.
Who come home and who doesn't. So, but
What did you enjoy? Is there anything in your time in the Army that you enjoyed the most about? What could you tell people who might consider going in to the military? I mean, what in your mind did you enjoy the most while you were there?
well, looking back now, you know, it was a good way to kind of mature and grow up. But what I enjoyed about it, I enjoyed the camaraderie. I enjoyed a lot of, being around the same, even within the military, you got people that political, but for the most part, most of the people, excuse me, in the military, or at least in my era, were the same types of people. So you've got very similar people. You got a lot of people that's got their childhood trauma and whatever. So, and they've got their screws up. That's why they smoke and drink, or that's why they, have random sex a lot or whatever. They're dealing with their trauma in their own ways. And so, everybody's not a goody two shoes. Everybody's not a Boy Scout. And you can be accepted, that sense of family that may have been missing. So all that was very positive. Getting a Dear John letter in basic training, that kind of destroyed the whole reason I joined the military. I was going to win her back, so that kind of didn't work out. But when I went back in, I had some the Q course. Anybody that's thinking about going in the military with special operations, and I don't care if you're like dead set on being a Navy SEAL, join the Army and go directly to the Rangers. There's not a better platform to train to be a future, tier 1 operator than starting out in a place like that. You learn all the real basics to patrolling, to the infantry, to war, all those real basic things. You live and breathe those things at a young age. And, that's a really high speed unit that you can walk into right off the street.
Okay, and that's different. The Ranger School is a little different than just infantry, or
Okay, so yeah, let's break this down. So if you become an infantryman, which in itself is badass. I mean, that's whether you're in the Marine Corps, the Army, or whatever. The infantry's tough.
Mhm.
It's no joke. And it's not that when I went to the Rangers it was tougher. It was just different. So when you go to a Ranger battalion, there's 3 Ranger battalions that make up the 75th Ranger Regiment, 1st, 2nd, 3rd Ranger Battalion. So I was in 1st Ranger Battalion. And serving in a Ranger Battalion would mean that, yes, you're an expert in infantry, but you're also an expert in, air, parachuting in, say like airfield seizures. But what happened since my era with the Rangers is the Rangers have gotten a lot more advanced in how they operate. Technology's helped that, the way they're using the Rangers now. And so the Rangers are being used. When I was in the Rangers, when the Rangers worked with Delta Force, it was to support them. It wasn't that it wasn't any less dangerous for the Rangers. It was just the mission, the responsibilities on the ground were usually blockades, like you would see in Black Hawk Down. You see the Rangers coming in at the intersections to keep anybody from coming in and keep any bad guys from going out. And so they shut that building down, and then Delta goes into the building itself, and they can work surgically, not worrying about pulling their own security externally. That's what
Right.
the Rangers are doing there. So they had that trusted relationship for a long time. And but now the Rangers, not to speak too much about this, but now the Rangers kind of have their own pretty high speed units within that unit that do some pretty amazing things too. But the Army is a lot different than the Navy. The Navy special ops seems to never try to miss an opportunity to get in the news and take credit for what the SEALs have done, and that's just a reality. And the Army, typically the only time you're going to a special unit in the Army is going to be in the news is if they can't hide it and keep it out of the news, like in Mogadishu. When you see Rangers and Delta Force guys being drugged through the street, you can't deny that they exist. And so, those are the times that seems to happen.
Nice. Well, Killian said triple canopy and Ramadi. Y'all, none of us here can even fathom how legit this dude is. My generation of warriors refer to him as OG.
So there's somebody that knows what that means, huh? To
Yeah.
be a triple canopy in the beginning and Ramadi in '04. Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty well, it was the highlight of my life. It's the highlight of the book. And the only thing that I'm doing in my life that's cooler than what 2004 was, is the future looks really bright with what I'm doing with yoga and the foundation. And, I hope the book does well, but I just think that putting a beautiful, loving type, forgiving energy out to the universe and fundamentally changing, which is what warriors do. If you look at Crazy Horse and Sitting Bull, and Sitting Bull is, and as he was older, and Crazy Horse when he was younger, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, which is the Bible basically for yoga, when it talks about, it's basically a story about war and talking about that balance of peace and war. How do you
Right.
balance, war? How do you, become kind of a sage, or, this stoic, this beautiful light, this beautiful example? How do you do that? And then, practice yoga moves where you're holding a sword over your head and Viranadrasana, practicing chopping people's heads off. So how do you do that? Well, that's what life is, right? It's a balance. And you need some kind of yoke. People use religion, people use yoga. You need some kind of yoke. You need something to bring your mind and your body that's most likely separated. That's why people can't sleep at night, whatever. You bring those things back together as one in this moment. That's life. That's
Right.
real life. That's the magic. And so, however a person needs to get there, but I found through reading the book "The Body Keeps the Score" by Bessel van der Kolk, getting educated on why we are the way we are. Why do we react? Why am I in traffic? And if it's some fighting age male being disrespectful for me, why do I just want to kill him? Well, I'll tell you why. Because in Iraq in 2004, that's what we would have done, and we'd have just went on down the road, and that problem would have been solved because you didn't mess um, with us. You didn't mess with the military. You had to give us a buffer because they would just drive into you and blow you up. So you get conditioned. You spend 9 years in an environment where it's like, I'm cleared hot to shoot somebody if they get carried away. And then the next thing you know, you're back home. And not only can you, you know, not shoot anybody, you don't need to let that get you upset. You know, you don't need to let that ruin your day. There's like levels to that. And so it's been hard for me. You know, yoga has really, really helped me. And I'm lucky. You know, mine's a fighting age male. If you're an old guy or a young kid or a woman or whatever, blah, you know, I might say a cuss word and move on. But if you're a fighting age male, I don't know what it is, but if you piss me off, I still want to be 25 years old and sort you out. And so I'm working on that. That's not a good thing. I'm not promoting that. But if you read my life story, it was a fight from the get-go, and I am a fighter. And I think the VA's just now maybe got me where I get my blood pressure under control because I run a little hot
Right.
because that's what's worked for me.
And I think obviously you're not the only one that feels that or has that tendency in their head, um, being in combat and seeing those kinds of things, and it's interesting to hear how you deal with it versus other people who how they deal with that. So going into that a little bit, how what kind of resources, or did you have any resources when you came back to help deal with those kinds of things?
Well, I think it was about 2 days after I was home from one deployment. I did 15 combat deployments. I think after one deployment, within 2 days, I was driving down the road with my kids in the back seat with my gun in my hand, screaming at somebody.
Oh,
So there was stuff like that. There was no, I lived like that, up until recently. Um, and if I hadn't read The Body Keeps the Score in 2015, in 2019, and decided that yoga was, because in the Body Keeps the Score, there was a study done in 2014 with traumatized women, sexually assaulted women, really damaged women. When you're a kid and the people that you're supposed to trust are the ones hurting you, that really messes a person up. And so they take this group of women, and they found out, I think it was over about a year and a half period, that yoga, mindfulness type yoga, which is exactly the type of yoga I teach, benefited the group better than any other medication on the market for depression, PTSD. So when that was like, oh, here's a way for me to fix myself, and maybe I can help fix other people too. Because I don't know if most Green Berets, people that gravitate to become a Green Beret, a Green Beret is really an instructor type of person, a mentor type, a teacher type of person, that does well as a Green Beret, in addition to all the other hats that Green Berets wear. What you've got to be good at is winning the hearts and minds, the confidence and trust of a local indigenous group that doesn't know you. They just know that you're supposed to come here and teach them something to overthrow their government so that they can do good things for their family, whatever. And so, for whatever reason, I like teaching things that I believe in to people who, want that. And that's why giving free yoga. And that's why I say, if people don't like my type of yoga, they can get their money back, when I'm giving it for free, because, my yoga is therapeutic. There's a lot of yoga, and I'm not going to start beating up on yoga, but there's a lot of yoga in the West that is geared towards the way I look. Well, that is a pose. And by definition, a pose is a persona. It's fake. Right. It's not real. So what we're working on is what's real. When I get mad in my car now, I go back to my hands. And the first thing I notice is my hands are about to rip my steering wheel off. And I go, breathe and relax your hands. And now all of a sudden I'm back in my body. I can relax my jaw. It doesn't matter. if you could be anywhere right now. It doesn't matter what they're doing out here. Just stay right here, breathe deep. Next thing I know, I don't want to hurt nobody anymore, but I've been practicing for years that mindfulness, changing those neural pathways to where when we're in a yoga pose, I'm not telling people you're not doing it right. And then they feel like they're doing something wrong. Everybody's doing it right as long as you're breathing deep and you don't want to be someplace else. You're balanced. You're paying attention to what your hands are doing. You're not off somewhere. So we're teaching real yoga. I'm practicing real yoga. And after about 3 intense years of yoga teaching, I'm just starting to get it. It's just starting to really help.
So when you started doing yoga, like I don't know if you can recall, like the first day that you
Yeah.
thought, well, I'm going to give this a try. Did you feel really awkward? Did you think, what in the world am I doing? Only sissies do this,
Well,
things like that.
all those things. So when I first went to my first yoga class in my early 20s, Cassie Grow, a local, her and Tony are a local couple here with a family, and everybody knows who the Grow family are. She taught yoga and fitness for years and years and years. When I went to that years ago, all I did was think about how not flexible I was, and how some of this stuff was really hard, and these girls were making it look easy, and maybe this isn't for me. I've got a really big ego, and I don't feel like the alpha. All those things were going through my mind at the time. When I went back in 2018, so 20 something years later, when I went back to yoga, um, hot yoga in 2018, I was able to get into my own little funk. Like they would turn the lights down, candles. It was 105 degrees or 103 degrees, whatever
Oh,
it was.
oof.
I wasn't in great shape. I wasn't flexible, but people seem to mind their own business in that type of class. And so a lot of things along the way I picked up in my class. So, there's no talking, there's no cell phones. Um, we're taking that busy mind that's off solving the world's problems. And that's what's so ironic. Whether you believe the world's been here for 6,000 years or 4.5 billion years, um, you know, the world's been here a lot longer without me in it, and it did okay. And it's going to be around a lot longer when I'm gone, and it's going to be okay. That's my ego. And so my whole life, nobody taught me really what ego meant. It was like, oh, you're just an ego. And I thought, oh, I'm acting too tough, or I lifted too much weights, or,
More a physical thing.
I didn't, I didn't
Yeah.
understand, I didn't really learn what those things meant. And yoga teaches you that. And it challenges you. And what I've found with the ego, that's where all our suffering comes from. And so if you can lasso your ego and get it under control, be friends with your inner monster and all those things, you can live a pretty heavenly life right here on earth. That's the real secret. And so, but what I found out is the more honest I get with myself and other people, the better I live, the more virtuous. Making sleep and diet a priority, stop drinking alcohol, no nicotine, things like that. What I'm finding out is there's a lot of layers. And so I'll get to a point where it's like, man, I'm getting good at this. Like I'm starting to figure. I really I'm practicing what I preach. I'm not a hypocrite. And then something will pop up, and I'll go, oh, I got another test. I'm being tested. And so what I've changed, I don't do the victim thing. Just not doing the victim thing. So that's what I try to do is just change the narrative. Try to change the way I look at it.
That's great. That's wonderful. I know that's a journey in and of itself, because it's not something like that you can just flip a switch on and off and say, okay, I'm good now. It's something that to be worked on
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I certainly commend you for that. It's I yeah. Um, what kind of, I guess, misconceptions about the army or military in general, um, would you like to clarify, or can you clarify?
Okay, that's a great question. You're going to be lied to. You're going to be manipulated. It's a toxic environment. Your real job, whether you support it indirectly or directly, your real job in the military is to go kill and control folks anywhere they send you for the best interest of the richest people in control of the government at that time. That's your really real goal. So understand that at no point is the military, just like the government, really going to care about you and your family on a personal level. You are a tool. And so it's a win-win scenario when you can go, okay, I'll let you form me into a tool to be used in peacetime or wartime, depending on, how that plays out. But I'm also going to make sure this is a win-win scenario. I'm going to get my college paid for. I'm going to learn a craft that I can do outside of the military where I have options. So, but if you just barely passed the ASVAB, you've got a terrible situation at home. Man, it's just a great place to go grow up, learn how to save some money. I've made hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, and I've lived off of, $12,000 in a year as a minimalist. I've been happier a lot more as a minimalist than I was when I was making those $100,000. So it's buying stuff and making that money. That's not happiness either. So if somebody's just wanting to get stable and not trying to become a millionaire overnight, these crazy goals that people get sometimes. I think the military's a place where a regular person that doesn't have any real bright lights or options in life, where a person can go and change that. You yourself can go and change that, whether you do it in 4 years or 24 years, if you really want to. And if you want to endure being lied to, manipulated, when they're done with you, they're done with you. Unless you're lucky enough to be 100%, or there's some exceptions to that. But, you know, when you get used up, you're a tool and you'll get set aside like that. And so the officers get treated a little better. If you can go in as an officer, you're going to have a better experience. What I'm saying is not going to make as much sense to an officer, because the enlisted path can be very different, especially in special operations and in the infantry. So it can be brutal. It can be a very toxic environment. So if you're already traumatized and you're going into the military like I did to try to make your life better, it can still be very traumatic for you. But you can push through that and make your life better. And that's what I tried to do. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you succeeded in a lot of areas in your life, and I'm really in awe of how you've dealt with everything that you have gone through, and mentally, physically, and come out the other side. And obviously it's something that you're working on all the time, continuously,
Yeah.
and
That's
learning from.
day and night.
But I think that's just life in general too. I mean, whether we're in a military setting, or had been, or not, to continually work on yourself and make yourself a better person, or try to make yourself a better person, because you want to, not because somebody's telling you you need to. It's something you need to want to do, and it sounds like you've been there and you've done that, and it's made your life more whole mentally for you too.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you're going to bed at night and you can't fall asleep, if you're waking up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning with 10,000 thoughts and you can't go back to sleep, if you're walking around like a zombie and your head's all over the place and so forgetful, I lived, and I think most people live like that, most of their life. And it's just, it's awful when you get on the other side of that and look back and go, man, I had it all wrong. And So I'm not sure exactly what my point was with that, but it's just nice. And I don't know that everybody gets to do it, but it's just nice to kind of wake up, and go, man, I've been told wrong. I've been doing it wrong. It's felt wrong, and I'm running out of time. I want to get this right. And you have to be honest. And so I found out that a clear conscience, it's the best drug out there.
Right.
So, like, you have a clear conscience, you start going to bed at night. You don't wake up in the middle of the night with your heart pounding. You don't have something you're worried about somebody finding out about. You don't, like, it's so liberating. And so again, when I talk about my book, I basically took the side of me that I'd like to keep covered up and shared it with the universe in that book. And I didn't go into great detail. I wasn't going to, mass murder myself in my own book. But, if you look at it, I pretty much go through there and admit the times when I was a lying, narcissistic, monster. And, we can all be monsters. You got some people that say, well, I'm not monstrous, but passive aggressively, they do little things to irritate people, or, they, put, rat pellets into your, food or whatever. And they think, well, I'm not a monster. It's like, that's monstrous. That's as monstrous as.
It is.
Be careful thinking that you're not a monster. Go spend a couple days alone with yourself
Yep.
and really be honest with yourself, and then go, okay, if you were king for a day and you could do whatever you want to, which is what people get to do in war in the beginning, because it's just chaos, you get to see what you will do and what you won't do with or without permission. You get to see what kind of money. So a lot of people that haven't been in scenarios like that, never been in a fist fight, whatever, they're like, oh, I'm not a monster. It's like, well, did you lie to get your husband in trouble, during your divorce? Well, yeah, well, that's monstrous. Like you hurt somebody, using the legal system. That's as monstrous as anything. So, and what I've found out through reading, I recommend to anybody out there, Dr. Jordan Peterson, Bessel van der Kolk, some guys like that. But what I've learned, you feel things and then you hear something articulated and you put those two together, and now it's like, oh, I understand now. I've been feeling it and now I can articulate it. Now it makes sense. Just like 2 + 2 = 4. It might take a minute for that to make sense. And so where was I going with that? I don't know. Get tired, getting hot. I should have turned the air on in here. It's getting hot.
Oh. Yeah. We finally we had turned the air off and turned the heat on, and now we're back to turning the
I
air
know,
back
right.
on because it
Yeah,
was in the 80s again.
yeah. So it cooled off like it was going to rain, so I turned the air conditioner off. It got pretty hot. So it's
Mother Nature, she didn't know what she wants to do. I'm telling you, it's
sitting.
snow in
But no,
Montana,
look, like I'm
and
sweating. I'm not stressed out right now. It's just getting hot.
uh,
Freezing my
so
truck.
can you think of, outside of yoga, any resources, or support that you found the most helpful in your transition to civilian life that
Well,
you recommend? Or
what I can say about like my tribe, my warrior friends, my military friends, law enforcement friends, whatever, paramedic friends, people that work in those environments. I think, any kind of exercise, you're going to find out is going to help you clear that energy. So that energy. So if you start making fun of me right now and embarrass me, there's going to be an energy. There's going to be a response, and whether I let it out or not, there will be an internal response no matter what, unless I'm a yoga master, right? And it doesn't penetrate my armor because I'm that mindful that what you say, good or bad, that that balance, equanimity, whether it's good or bad, I'm going to stay right down the middle of the road. And so what was I'm sorry. So what was,
More any specific resources or support that
right,
you
right,
found the most helpful when you transitioned to civilian life?
right. So what I've seen in a lot of my other friends too is jujitsu and martial arts seems to be a real good go-to. But like I was getting into, and I get sidetracked thinking about these other things. But so that energy. So I've had a bad day. Now I've got this energy. I'm gritting my teeth. I can't swallow. I don't want to talk anymore because I'm either going to cry or scream. People walk around, drive around like that all the time.
Mhm.
Well, if you don't get rid of it, it didn't go anywhere. So tomorrow I have a bad day. So instead of exercising, I drink a beer and eat a pizza. Well, now I've gained 2 pounds. I'm less mobile. So I'm going the opposite direction. See where that story's taking me?
Yep.
So it's predictable. It's predictable. So at the end of the day, what you have to do is subscribe to something and just get up every day and trust it. Just have faith and get out, get outside, walk for at least an hour every day. A lot of things I do are for free. A lot of the research I do into mental health, mindfulness is on YouTube for free. A lot of my chapters to my book are on YouTube for free at Be Yoga Strong. So
And your YouTube channel is Be Yoga Strong?
Be Yoga Strong dash Coffee County. Yeah.
Oh, let's change.
I think volunteering, or a mitzvah, is beneficial. The key is the bad stuff that's trapped in there. You got to get out. You got to break loose and get it out. The new bad stuff that's coming in, you got to get back out. And you got to get in front of that, get on the other side of that. And the only way to do that is to slow down, be honest, look in the mirror, and quit worrying about everybody else and unscrew yourself.
Hmm.
And at the end of every day, if you're upset, if something isn't going right, it's your fault. And until you can get to that place of accountability and acceptance, you're always going to be the victim suffering. You're always going to be wanting this kind of justice. You've been wronged and everybody else has been right. And that's an awful place to put yourself because that's going to give you a low cardiac variability guaranteed. That's going to shorten your life about 10 to 15 years. And that's not counting, your alcohol abuse or your drug abuse, how that might shorten your life as well. That's just from improper breathing and thinking. That's from being in a negative place in your mind and holding your breath and living like a scared animal instead of being in this moment right now. I don't want to be anywhere else. I can't think of nothing else except right now, and every now and then slowing down and taking a breath because I do enjoy this.
Yeah, I think it's really good information to hear from other people, how you are maintaining, your mental uh abilities, what I mean, and staying in the moment and dealing with, yes, as Killian says, ownership, that's it. That's
Well, all of us were taught that in the military. There's, excuses have zero, counts for nothing. So yeah. But look, I don't want to misrepresent what I'm doing. I have been on and off Zoloft to help, and I've been on and off blood pressure medicine to help. And
Hmm.
so I've pretty much figured out a lot of what my problem is. And now I'm really starting to, like I said, it's taken me about 3 years, and I've peeled that onion back enough now to where I really feel like I'm growing.
Right.
I, if I could see that part of my brain, I feel like I'm becoming a better human being, and the positive, that parasympathetic response, that beautiful part of our mind that we live in when we're not scared or worried. It feels like that part is growing, like I've seen in videos with the positive reinforcement type training, mindfulness.
Right.
So
And that's one of the nice things about the internet, and having that instant gratification when it comes to information, is you're able to do this research and find these things out that are out there. Of course, not everything is 100% correct. You kind of have to do your own research while you're researching, to get to that point. But
everything on the internet is not 100% accurate. You are correct. That's right.
yes.
Be careful.
And so it's great that you have that ability. And again, just for those that are out there listening, really consider the fact that this is not, what Lee is saying is not something that is going to be an immediate cure all. It takes time. And it takes persistence, and you just have to take one moment and then the next moment, and keep doing this until it becomes a mental habit, something that is as easy as breathing, or not necessarily as easy as breathing, but mentally you keep thinking about it. Just know that no matter what it is, there is no easy fix. You have to mentally, you have to change that mindset, and sometimes it's going to take a lot of effort.
Yes, I think most of most, if not all, the experts agree, that all the mental health things, trauma is the only one where something really happened to you. All the other mental health issues are just in your mind.
Right.
Trauma, is something that really took place, and so yeah, it's just its own different. A lot of people just don't look at it that way. That it's an actual true injury, and some people are messed up because of something that actually happened to them that now they're trying to work around or deal with, and a lot of times, you know, we become monstrous as a response to monsters in our life, and if we're not careful, we'll become a monster. And so on that, you know, let me just say this as a disclaimer, something I've seen since becoming a yoga teacher, and really understand a lot better. Is there people that get into the medical field? There's people that get into martial arts. There's people that get into yoga, and most are for the right reasons, and some are just true predators.
Right.
And a lot of times you can pick out the true predators by their hypocrites. So just be sure, it's like, don't be a bloodless scholar, as Nietzsche says. Like, if you can regurgitate a book on yoga, that's great. But if you're just doing that just so you can manipulate people into believing that you know a lot about yoga, that's not the important part of the story. What's important is, if I read this and understand that, am I applying it first before anybody, before I teach it to anybody else? Am I applying it? And, when I first started teaching yoga, I was realizing that, I was teaching people to, breathe and stay calm under stress. And if somebody in class got on their phone, I'd get pissed off. Just blatant disrespect. That was one of the rules, one of the three rules. And people, but that's not mindful. It's still yoga class. It's not a firefight in the middle of Ramadi that I'm responding to. Like, why
Right.
am I getting mad? I didn't understand why I was getting mad. And, that took me a year or two just to work through. So does it take time? Yeah, to change those neural pathways take time, but it doesn't take long to act like you know it. And that's what people need to be cautious of. They need to look for, and they need to try to not be. You know, a lot of people can act like they're an expert in healing, and that's because predators like the vulnerability of people in those scenarios. So 1 out of every 10, 2 out of every 10 people in those roles may very well not be very honest people, may very well be fake and whatever. And so what I encourage people to do is when they get into this, don't be that. Like, practice it as if you're the only person that matters, and just be careful of people, whether they're in a religious role, a doctor role, a real authority role where vulnerable people trust them. Be careful, because that's where real predators like to hang out.
Well, those are great words. Those are really great words. So if anybody's got any questions for Lee, go ahead and get those posted. I do have one from Killian for you.
Okay.
And it says, Lee, do you have a story or a general experience about Marines you want to share?
I absolutely do. So in chapter 13 and 14, but mainly in chapter 13, I talk about my experience with 2 4 Marines and 2 5 Marines in Ramadi, Iraq. And it was a beautiful experience. We all give each other a hard time, but those Marines, those infantry Marines, they're as good as they come. They're real devil dogs. And 2 4 and 2 5, a lot of people haven't done anything like this, and you're not supposed to do anything like this. But in the first battle of Fallujah and Ramadi, my team with Triple Canopy, Team Miami, we teamed up with the military and fought alongside the military. They had lost so many people. We were all ex-Green Berets, Rangers, Navy SEALs, Delta Force operators down at the government center, and those guys are dying left and right. And a team of Marines that we had become real close with got orders to cross the street and start clearing these buildings. And I talk about that in great detail, and so I'm not going to go into great detail right now, but we went with them.
Wow.
Yeah, so we were over there as contractors, civilians, working to protect Ambassador Stu Jones. And when he didn't need us, we would go back town or do whatever we needed to do to help support the Marines. So I love me some Marines. I got to meet General Mattis and work alongside his guys. And I got to actually take General Kelly down to Hilla on a mission. And I got a funny story about General Kelly in there too, when he was riding in the limo with us. So I love Marines.
That's awesome. So Jim doesn't have a question, but he said the book has been purchased and he's looking forward to reading it. He said, "Thank you, Lee. You're truly a great human being and very open and informative, and was a pleasure listening to you."
Thank you
Uh,
so
so again, the name of that book, Internal Volume, Where a Monster and a Mindfulness Become One. You can find that out there on Amazon. Looks like you can also, I don't know if is it on Audible? Do you know?
Well, see, I want to do an audio book.
If you need somebody to read it, let me know. I'm happy to do it.
No, well, see, I enjoy reading it. Like the free chapters that I've done. Like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people, well, people that know me, they're like, I love it because I can hear you talking. People that don't know me wouldn't know the difference. But most of the people that bought the book are from my hometown, or I've worked with, or I mention a lot of people in the book. And so, just real quick about the book, I did not write this book to beat people up. I know it's karma to say negative things, but again, the higher purpose of this book was the good and bad of my life, to put it out into the universe and just let it go. And so now the only real trauma in my life, the only real stress in my life is whatever currently I'm doing in my life that I'm not managing well, like a bad relationship or something like that. But my past, I was able to really work through all that and just say, hey, here's my story. Y'all can believe what you want to. I'm telling the truth. I'm being honest. Y'all can believe whatever you want to. I'm going to move forward without holding on to all that, because those voices are there like, oh, what's that person thinking? Oh, there's somebody from high school. I wonder what that, it's like,
Yeah.
I don't care, man. Look, I've been through a lot, and I've killed a lot of folks, and I've helped a lot of folks. And all I want to do now is just love, give for healing. I just want to be a good person, be around good people, and I love being around animals now, even more so than people. So I don't hunt anymore, So I've come a long way, and so I'm not really worried. I've gotten past my past. It's my present that I just need to make sure that I stay on top of, and that can still be challenging too because life goes on.
Hmm. It
Uh,
does.
and there's still lessons to learn. And my biggest problem, everybody, when they get real honest, they're going to find out what their biggest problem. My biggest problem was my relationship with my mother, and I've tried to marry, be in loving relationships with women like my mother. And it took a long time to figure out what I was doing wrong because those, like my relationship with my mother had a very tragic ending that's all detailed in the book, and as well as my personal relationships. And so what I found out is, yes, some of it was me, a lot of times. But the real problem is I'm going after the wrong type of person. So if I'm with the wrong type of person, I can stay triggered. I can regress. I can be a scary animal. Not that I would, you know, go kill a woman or something like that, but feel really awful on the inside. Um,
Right.
be upset all the time, blood pressure high, just a bad version of me. And it has something to do with that connection with my mother. And I've realized that now. And so now when I see that person and I meet that person, I go, oh, I know why you're attracted to me. And I know why I'm so attracted to you in this moment. Like, bam, it's like, you're that person. Like, okay. Like, yeah. Nice to meet you.
Right. Now go away.
I can't do that. This because it's so toxic, but it's so dark,
Hmm.
and it becomes so attractive because usually the type of women that guys like me, special operators, whatever, when we, a lot of times it's that stripper type of, you just want some hot, everything goes, cool with what you do for a living. Not just everybody is cool with being with somebody that's had a traumatic background, that's, killed a couple dozen people in combat or whatever, not a lot of people. So, yeah, finding the right person. But just a shout out to everybody, honestly, going back and looking at all my relationships and all my mistakes and all the drama in my life, 80% of it was definitely my fault. And probably the other 20% was I was with the wrong person. And so I think when you get healthy and you get with somebody that's healthy, you complement each other. So if you're unhealthy and you get with somebody that's unhealthy, trauma bonding, which is what I've been doing, you just drag each other down.
Right.
You just, you keep each other triggered. And so you wind up loving somebody so much, but then it's like you wind up hating them
Yeah.
because of that. So yeah, I think all the answers. I watched a movie when I was a kid, and it was one of those corny old movies, like '60s or whatever. And it was like the secret of the movie was the guy found a mirror, and he looked in the mirror, and that was all the answers to all his problems. He was on this quest. And like again, it was pre. It was one of those really old, corny kind of movies. But I remember that, and I remember as a kid thinking, "What did that mean?" That was the stupidest movie. And it's like, I know exactly what that means. It's like all your
Yeah.
problems and everything will be answered in the mirror. And You got to slow down and get on the other side, that painful side. You can't get healthy without going through the pain.
Right.
You just need to have a plan. And yoga, I've at times, smoking weed has helped. But yoga, spirituality can help. But, I see a lot of people that say they're spiritual that are suffering is because it doesn't allow them to really connect. They're trading the life they have now and suffering for, well, there'll be a better place if I just hang in there. And it's like, well, that's a hell of a way to live. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
all I have is right now. Like right now is my life. That's all I have. Everything
Yep.
else is in the future and the past. The science proves that if you're in the future and the past in your mind, you're in a part of your brain associated with suffering. The only place you can find real joy is right now, every time you have it. People have to get off their phones. They have to stop separating from themselves. They have to do the opposite. They have to come back to now. And all those answers will be in the mirror. And you're better off in the woods in a sleeping bag for your mental health than you are sitting on the couch in front of a TV with your
Yeah.
cell phone and refrigerator full of everything. Your mental and physical health will do better on one small meal a day out in the wilderness. It really will. It might take you a month to figure it out, but when you
But I
get
tell
on,
you, food tastes better out in the wilderness too. Just
yeah,
to throw that out there for anybody who's never, been camping or any of that. So
yeah. Well, as humans, we defy nature, but every other living thing on this planet succumbs to nature. We defy it in a lot of ways, and so it makes being a human a really tricky um, journey. And a lot of people think whatever they want to think, but you've been given the container you've been given. I've been given this container for
yep.
a certain amount of time. I'm on this journey.
Yep.
This container, we all know it. This container is not going to last.
Oh,
And we're so worried about how it looks. We need to be concerned about how it feels. How do you feel inside your own container, and quit worrying about everybody else and everything else? So
I think that's great. I really do. I think it's a great word of wisdom
I
for every.
stole it from Rumi. It's one of Rumi's long poems. I
Oh,
shortened it and made my own version. I give
hey,
credit to Rumi.
that's all right. So one of the things, everybody, just to kind of put this out there. Um, I am, when we hit 100 subscribers, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. So make sure to like, subscribe, share, and also hit the notifications so that you don't miss any content that comes out. But not sure when, but I think Lee is going to go ahead and actually donate at some point a signed copy of his
That's
book
right.
as well.
That's,
So pretty excited about that.
you're going to send me an address. You're going to text me an address.
I
And
am.
uh, within the next week, I'll have you a signed copy. And here's what I can do. Just, as a show of thanks and gratitude. I'm grateful to be in this. I could have been long gone a long time ago. I'm grateful to have this opportunity to talk. And so, if you'd like, I'll send you a copy. This one copy I have right here. I'll just send this to you. Sign this to you.
Oh,
And if you'd like, when you have the name of whoever wins, I can write something to them and send them a free copy on your behalf.
oh, that would be great. Well, I'm sure anybody would love to have that. That would be wonderful. Certainly appreciate that. And we really appreciate your time too. One of the things I spent my day today doing, and so for me, I have to keep my mind occupied, because otherwise, you get yourself in this funk. And so I spent the day working on some tumblers. So, little conversations with that.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool.
And I did a t-shirt as well. So I've got the logo here, and let's see if we can get
Awesome.
the banner off. But Yeah, so just kind of get that done. So we'll have at least a T-shirt and a tumbler, and we'll see what else we can come up with. When we hit some, certain hot marks of subscribers. So um, be sure, everybody, like I said, to like, subscribe, share, and again, hit the notification because you know, sometimes depends on my what I happen to find out there, like the what was that? Mind over land. Have you ever heard of that, Lee? Mind over land. That
No, no, no.
uh, it's um, it's actually, I guess they take veterans and their families or supporters of veterans, and they're a 501c3, and they take them on trips like all across the country
Let's talk. Yeah, 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 yeah,
into like hiking here and there. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
come this
yeah.
Veterans Day, they're taking them to the North Carolina mountains. So, and I know from what I can understand, like right now, they have well over 300 people participating in this for over Veterans Day weekend. So that's awesome.
Yeah, no, I know there was a foundation back when I walked the Appalachian Trail, um, that would put veterans on the trail and sponsor their pay for their hike just for the therapeutic benefits. Um, but just like, excuse me, just like with that hike or with any book or with yoga or whatever, just remember, you can do that hike, and if you're not in the right place with the right mindset there for the right reason, you may not have the nirvana experience I did. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have to be ready to be a better version of yourself, and what that's going to require is you to quit lying to yourself, and that's hard for people to do. It's hard to slow down and do that, but um, yeah. And I'll tell you another thing. I know we're winding up, but other things that are in the book that help people that may not be able to get the book. Intermittent fasting. Fasting does wonders for your health. Intermittent fasting will do wonders for your weight control. Eating for your blood type. I cut out a couple things. I used to have, we've been talking for a couple hours, maybe you start getting a little and have to drink something. But, I used to eat a diet where all the time, I had acid reflux or something
Hmm.
going on or whatever. And it's like, it's because you're eating food that isn't real. It's, it's,
Yeah.
it's not actually real food. It tastes real and you love it, and it's addictive because it has sugar in it and all that. And when you look at sugar, it's just as addictive as sex and other things like that, as far as how well it makes you feel. And there's studies that show it's as hard to get off sugar as it is heroin. So, and there's links to cancer with sugar and everything. So your diet is everything. So if you want to start feeling better, if you really care about yourself, you got to prove it to yourself. And if every day you're losing that battle, just don't give up. If every day it's like, I'm going to intermittent fast, and your window closes at 5 and it's 6 o'clock and you have some peanuts or whatever, it's like, okay, you didn't do it right today. You're going to do it right tomorrow.
There you go.
Because another thing I've learned is the more you try to do something, the better you'll get at it. And that's something good or something bad. The more you practice something, no matter what it is, ethically, it doesn't matter. The more you practice whatever it is, you will get better at it. So if you want to quit smoking, keep trying. It's scientifically proven you'll get better at it and eventually be able to just put it down one day.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Well, Lee, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and having a conversation.
Thank
Um, and we're going to be signing off here. Again, if you have any, veteran friends who'd like to come on and tell their story, they are more than welcome. Feel free to share my number, or they can contact me, conversations with avet@gmail.com.
Okay.
So either way is fine.
If
So
you can text me this in a link, this show, if you can text
absolutely.
that in a link, I'll upload it and I'll help spread the word and help promote what you're doing. And I think what you're doing is great. I think having an open forum like this for veterans to say, yeah, the VA has screwed me over and this is what's really going on. To say, oh, but it's not all bad. There's this counselor I got at the VA that's really helping me.
Right.
You know, yoga and drug, you know, for people to get on here and start sharing that, you know, there's this cloak of secrecy among veterans, like all veterans are good and all veterans are this, and all veterans are treated well and they get all the medical support and what. It's like, it's a really violent, cold world, navigating getting your VA benefits and trying to get taken care of after a war and whatever. So I'm really, keep doing what you're doing. Send out the right energy, and your thing's going to grow. You're going to attract the right things. Just keep doing good things for veterans and letting people tell their stories. And it was an honor to be here. It's an honor to have lived a life worthy of being on somebody's podcast. And if any of that sounded interesting, there's a whole lot more of that in the book.
That's right.
That I don't want to talk about with you. So
that's okay.
Our versions of stuff.
Yeah, and I put it out there. So, and then also, as we said, we'll have that opportunity at some point then to have a drawing. So, for Lee's book. So make sure y'all tune in next week as well, 6 p.m. Central Time, Conversations with a Vet. And again, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and then comment and like as well, and then hit that notification button. So, all right, Lee, if you want to hang tight, and I will be with you here backstage in just a minute.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Be safe.
Right. Yep. Everybody have a good night.